speaker you might have actually already seen before, just because he's that tall. But Joshua is not only tall, he's a serial entrepreneur and an award-winning designer and animator. I actually got to know Josh back in 2016 in Berlin when we visited you in Berlin with our cohort. And since then it's a great pleasure to know you, since you're so well connected into the German blockchain ecosystem and beyond. And we love to hear your thoughts about on the topic, how does money work when robots actually take over our jobs. So now we actually start to combine various technologies and try to think ahead. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very, very much. And thanks for everyone for coming. It's been such a great conference. I've had so many fantastic speakers. So did we have my slides up?
Someone told me you don't have slides.
Oh yeah, doch.
Okay.
Doch. Best word in German. Okay, sorry. It's on the drive. If humans not apply or something. Humans not welcome. There. Perfect. That's the one. So the talk is humans need not apply. So my name is Joshua Scigala. Thank you very much for the intro. We built the first Bitcoin gold exchange. It's like Kraken or Bitstamp, except you deal with allocated bullion on the other side instead of USD. So you're trading in and out of an allocated asset. So if we go bust as a startup, it doesn't matter. Our clients' gold is not on our books. But today we want to talk about human obsolescence and what does that mean. The whole concept of the machines taking all the jobs is an old tema. It's a really old problem, and we saw from the Industrial Revolution days the Luddites were going around smashing equipment because this equipment was taking jobs. So it really isn't that new. And when you say to people, the machine's going to take all the jobs, usually you think, usually the response you get is, no. It's always happened in the past where labor forces get moved to somewhere else. But this time it's different. And I say it's different because now machines have full vision. They have full dexterity of their fingers and their hands. They can reposition something. It's not just a dumb robot moving stuff and then it mucks up and then a human has to come in and recalibrate and get the chain going again. There's also an extreme advancement in artificial intelligence on how to deal with certain situations where a human doesn't need to step in. In fact, a lot of robots are now building other robots. And on top of that, now we of course have digital currency, which allow machines to have an understanding of resource allocation and to put a price on resource allocation, which really steps them forward in an understanding and in a trading mechanism. We see all sorts of blockchain-based startups tackling this. So as we can see, it was only 3 years ago where we saw robots being tethered to the ceiling and they were really sort of couldn't quite move, couldn't quite walk well. Now they're doing backflips off boxes. So Boston Dynamics, owned by Google, is leaps and bounds. It is moving so quickly, and this exponential curve, which humans have a very hard time grasping, is what's being played out here in terms of robotics, AI, and all the things I mentioned. So what's at stake? The first mainstream robot that we'll see is the autonomous car. It was only 5-6 years ago where they would have competitions across the desert sponsored by the US military to see what kind of car can navigate a desert. And now we have already, and I'm sure we've all seen, self-driving cars. Tesla's already rolling them off the production lines with semi-autonomous things. But what we're seeing is 3.5 million truck drivers. Jobs are at stake. That's only in the US. So this isn't in Germany. I could get the stats from the US a lot easier than Europe. So truck drivers, 3.5 million truck drivers, and they're navigating roads which are very, very easy to take over by the machines. It's not something like city roads. Long highways are very, very simple. Taxi drivers, 305,000. Bus drivers, 687,000. Courier drivers, 1.5 mil of those guys. So it's one sector in the economy which we will see transform within the next 3 years. And yeah, they won't lose their job straight away. Of course, first they'll be teachers. They'll be sitting behind the steering wheel watching this thing rotate. But eventually it'll get to the point where insurance companies will say, well, if there's an accident, we'll pay out. But insurance companies will find it very, very cheap because machines are just better at driving. They don't get tired. We're seeing the similar thing at checkouts where you get multiple checkouts, all self-checkout. This is the first step, and you see the cashier standing there, one cashier in charge of 6 self-checkouts, just watching people that they don't flog stuff. Amazon's bringing out, I'm sure you've seen, all the self-checkout where you walk in, you grab something, and through a lot of magic, they can keep track of everything that's being taken off the shelves and put back on the shelves, or taken out of the shop and charged. Every single startup that I come across, or that anyone comes across, is about removing inefficiencies. And the biggest inefficiency in most places is the human. So these inefficiencies, there was a startup that developed a robotic salad maker. McDonald's bought them, and we'll soon be making salads through those. The global labor force is approximately 3 billion workers, and a lot of those are uneducated or unskilled work, I should say, or learnt on the job. These are definitely things that can be taken out of play. So not only do we have the technology, but we have the concept of minimum wages, which are obviously we all want people to earn more. We don't want them to work 16-hour days and not being able to feed their families. Plus, there's also social problems with that. If they're working so much and not taking care of the children, the next generation generally have some sort of daddy issues, or they never saw their father, and we see statistics of fatherless or parentless homes. Generally, the children end up being bad actors in society. Okay, I get it. So, what the hell can we do? And it's funny because a lot of people would say, well, there's 2 concepts, and the 2 concepts that always come up are a universal basic income, and one of the other things that doesn't really come up that often, but is the sharing economy. And one of my first startups in the late 90s was the world's first swap site, where people just swapped stuff. There was no money involved. And it was an interesting experiment. Today I'm going to focus on universal basic income, because that's kind of what everyone thinks of when they think of human obsolescence. The problem with universal basic income is that if you have a country with such a scheme, the tax burden, for those that don't know what universal basic income is that everybody gets X amount every month, no matter how much they earn. This is a lot more efficient than, say, Hartz IV or these means-tested ways of giving people money, because you don't need to ask and find out everything there is to know about a certain person's income to give them money. You also you just give everyone the same. So the policing drops out, and all these means testing drops out. So it's a lot cheaper in one way, but obviously it's more expensive because you're giving everybody funds. Second thing that people bring up is, well, if no one's working, they'll just get bored and they'll run amok and start destroying things. And so I'm not sure what the answer is. In fact, I don't know what any of the answers are. These are all just questions, and I think they're important questions. The third one, which I think is more important, is that we have seen experiments in economics based around socialist ideals, and generally they turn into extreme dictatorships or vast control over, from the state when you have a mass of people that are dependent on a state apparatus to give out to help them eat. Usually they will do anything to protect that apparatus. So states can get extremely powerful and very dangerous when they have full control over how people eat and function. So these problems are not small problems with UBI, and then especially the state apparatus one is not really mentioned much when I listen to other people talking about universal basic income. So what do? Well, you may laugh, but let's just chuck a blockchain at it, eh? But actually, throwing a blockchain at it is kind of interesting, because we now don't need a centralized state. We can have an organic digital organism that is sitting in the fog, and it is allocated to pay out every 10 minutes. And we see experiments in economic theory now with tokens and blockchains. One of them is great, Steemit. It, instead of paying miners, it pays out content writers like bloggers, depending on how popular their articles are when people upvote them. And so imagine if we can, if this blockchain can pay out a regular amount to citizens of a certain jurisdiction, or even globally. Of course, there's major problems with that too. There's a computer science problem called Sybil attack. Others know it as sock puppets. When you open maybe multiple accounts on Reddit and upvote yourself, if you could pretend to be 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, you can take the income from all these people. So to get around that is hard. Also, attaching value to this thing, that's also a problem. And adjustments. What happens if there's a huge hurricane that rushes through, or something happens where you do need an injection of more liquidity or more money? So the Sybil attack problem, like I said, I don't know all the answers. I don't know any answers, actually. These are all just ideas. And it's something that is really important to start thinking about. But some answers might be biometrics to stop people. They have to upload certain sort of biometrics. Still don't know how that would work. You have reputation markets, and of course that can also be nightmarish. If anyone's seen the Black Mirror episode where people are just voting other people for how good they are, it's kind of crazy and nightmarish. But it could also be a solution where you have reputations based on that, and also oracles. And we heard a little bit about oracles, and people are working on. Oracles are really a system of getting external data from the real world and inserting it into a blockchain or into the whole digital space. This is something that all these problems are being worked on for other reasons, and we'll see solutions playing out there. The value creation problem isn't really a problem. As we've seen, Bitcoin was the first, and we see these tokens arise out of nowhere, and where they're getting their value from? They're getting their value from the community that's building around them. The community build a certain token or a certain thing and attach value to that because there's a larger and larger community willing to accept that. And so this whole value creation thing is a really interesting experiment in economics, and it's not that big of a problem, I don't think. So the one about adjusting, or if there's a large earthquake or something, an AI could have billions of data points, which then uses those data points to determine the output of a UBI blockchain or something like that. I mean, again, just crazy, fantastical ideas. But there are problems. There's huge dangers with AI. They're very, very unpredictable because they think in different ways. For instance, an AI was taught to never lose at a game of Tetris, and it never played before. What the first thing it did was touch all the buttons, try to figure out how to play. It found the pause button and went, done. I'm not losing, I'm never going to lose. So these are things like that. So it's very dangerous just to, especially with a broad topic like an economy, to just to put AI in charge of it is kind of dangerous. And also, we're way off. We're way off with artificial intelligence. A lot of people talk about artificial intelligence like it's here, but artificial intelligence is still very, very, very young. Again, I'm no expert in the field, and I don't think anyone is, but what I find beautiful about the blockchain space and the Bitcoin space, crypto space, is that we can test out economic theory without gulags. We can test out economic theory in different ways, in a voluntary way, where people can take a certain concept. For instance, about 5-6 years ago, there was one of the first altcoins was Freicoin, which was a demurrage coin, meaning that people thought people were holding onto their crypto too long. So what if people held onto it, it would just redistribute. Of course, it flatlined. It boomed and then it busted, and it's gone flatline ever since. But what was interesting about it was, hey, wow, in economic theory, we could test out and see if anyone would take hold of it. And I think in terms of experiments like universal basic income, we can try these things, but I think the traditional way of universal basic income with the state is a no-go zone. Thank you very much. That's my talk. You can follow me on @Vaultoro, and I'm constantly rambling on about all sorts of stuff and through that.
We still have time for 1 or 2 questions straight away. Anyone? There's one.
I think it's interesting that you say the automation of certain industries is a problem, because in my opinion it's not about the labor that we do, but the results that we get from it. I mean, we could do away with unemployment tomorrow if we just say, let's destroy all the farming equipment. We're back to the field plowing and trying to raise crops. We wouldn't be out of a job, but the standard of living would not be much better. So I'm wondering if it's a problem at all. Like, we don't have people that, like, we have automatic bank machines now. There used to be a person that gave you the money. That job is gone. But those people just moved on to something else. So I'm wondering whether the driving industry and all the other industries that are concerned will follow a similar path.
Yeah, and you could be right. You could be right. I guess what I like to do with this talk, what I wanted to do with this talk, was really get people to think about these issues and not just run towards where we're running as a society, and that is total disruption of inefficiencies. So yeah, I agree. Maybe it's not a problem, but I think it's definitely worth thinking about. Yeah.
One statement and one question. Statement, first of all, you said that a universal basic income leads to people that tend to be feeling useless to some extent or another. I think some of the experiments that have been done in the northern region showed a little bit that people felt driven towards more artistic stuff or something. They're fine, or they can live a little bit better or whatever, and can explore their other skills. So I think that uselessness is a rather minor factor. And the question is, not linked to that statement, but still linked to universal basic income, is robo-tax that some economists have proposed taxing the outcome from robotics, so production that was solely done by robots could be taxed to a high extent because to finance, for example, universal basic income. What's your stake on that?
Whether you do it through taxation or there's other concepts where people would crowdfund, say, one car, an autonomous car. That car would then be truly autonomous, but everybody that crowdfunded it gets the income or the cream off the top of what it's doing. And it would drive around, and eventually it would get so busy that it would order itself a daughter car from Amazon or wherever, and that would come off production line and start working as well, and it would eventually build out a fleet, and all those people would... So there's lots of ways, but the thing is with taxation of a robot is, what's a robot? Is the photocopier a robot? Do I tax it per sheet now? You know, it's a can of worms.
Yeah, it's just a bad term for saying anything that produces value in an economic sense.
Yeah.
Should be taxed to some extent. Like,
yeah.
Regardless if labor is behind it, because usually you tax labor and you just tax the outcome, right?
I'm just not a fan of centralized systems that take a whole lot of money and then redistribute because of the reasons brought up before. Many people are for that, so maybe that is an answer. But me personally, I find too much power in a single organization is scary.
All right. Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you very much.